Hey folks, this is Riker, and we've got big ARPG news this week. Diablo 4 Season 9 kicks off in a few days. The next Last Epoch season just got teased. We got an update on when we can expect Grim Dawn's next expansion. Plus, the Path of Exile devs gave us an update on the server issues. We'll cover all that and more, along with a discussion on respecialization. Should we be allowed free respec in games, or should we be forced to stick with our decisions and make a new character if we want to try something else? Timestamps in the description if you want to jump around to different topics, and be sure to ring that sub notification bell to be alerted to new Saturday episodes. Kicking things off with Diablo news, Season 9 is nearly upon us. Sins of the Horadrim launches July 1st, and I think Blizzard has been doing their biggest marketing push for a season start yet. We got a comic covering the lore of the season, available both as a webcomic, as well as in a video as a motion comic narrated by the voice actor of Donan. Definitely recommend that version. It was pretty cool. Talks about Zoltan Kulle and the Soul Stones as well. Very coincidental because just this week I posted a new Diablo lore video, which I hadn't done in a million years, covering Zoltan Kulle and the Black Soul Stone. We cover Act 2 of Diablo 3. Do be sure to check out that lore video if you missed it. The comic also brought up Tyrael and the fact that no one knew where Tyrael went or when he'd be back, and I can't help but feel they're reminding us of that because Expansion 2, by my guess, will feature Tyrael. I got a video going over my Expansion 2 predictions if you haven't seen that right here. They also made a sizzle trailer for Season 9 showing off what the season offers, as well as an infographic. And I think for the first time, they did a Twitch drop for watching their dev stream yesterday to encourage people to watch. And the production value on these streams has really ramped up since they started them at game launch. Meanwhile, Diablo 4 is going to be free with PlayStation Plus in July. Yeah, so if you got a PS Plus Essential subscription, you can play the base Diablo 4 at no extra charge. It's clear Blizzard is hoping to pump up the player numbers for Season 9. Now, players are still criticizing Season 9's offerings, but I have to hand it to the team for finally making the buildup of these season launches look like fully AAA production level big deals. I've previously seen people say that they didn't even know that a new season was starting in D4. Now, as for the dev stream, a lot of it was rehashing info we already knew from the test server dev stream. I cover the details in this video here. We'll go over some quick highlights and mention things that have changed since the test server. But first off, I like that the team stated at the start that when they get to the Q&A, they specified what kind of questions they're looking to answer. Because something a lot of people need to understand, all right? And this is coming from someone who has interviewed Blizzard devs for like a decade now. A lot of questions that you most want answered are questions that they are not allowed to answer. So it is a waste to even ask the question because they're going to give a non-answer like, we have nothing to announce at this time, or we'll think about that. There's only a certain amount of time to ask questions, so any non-answer question means a lost opportunity for a question that would actually be answered. So design philosophy questions, like asking them why they did X or what they think about Y, those tend to be questions that they can answer, and by learning why they make certain decisions or how they think, you can then extrapolate your own answers to a multitude of other questions. Anyway, Season 9 adds Horadric Spellcraft as the new powers, which basically lets you build a power from a few different components. There's also Horadric Jewels, which are a return of Season 7's occult gems with a more interesting twist. At least one of the gems will make you randomly get ambushed by really tough mummy monsters. That should be a nice surprise during a boss fight. You can earn this good boy as a pet via the season journey. Then as permanent additions, not Season 9, but come in a core game, we're getting updates to Nightmare Dungeons. We're getting new Horadric Strongrooms, which are kind of a combination of Season 7's Root Holds and the Gauntlet feature. So it's like mini dungeons that you find in Nightmare Dungeons that you can customize by selecting up to 3 out of 5 buff and bane combos. Then you gotta race against the clock to build up attunement via killing monsters and interacting with different doodads to optimize your run before fighting a boss and getting a reward cache. Now, since the test server, they added a greater variety of Strongroom bosses, and they really juiced up the rewards as well. Plus, in the final cache, you unlock a buff that will increase the rewards of the rest of the Nightmare Dungeon run, which encourages you to not just abandon the Nightmare Dungeon and go hunting for another Root Hold. Escalating Nightmares are a new feature. This is a a key that opens 3 back-to-back nightmare dungeons, and since the test server they are ramping up the escalation. That's great, they needed to. Each subsequent nightmare dungeon will be a jump in difficulty of several pit levels, they said. They also juiced up the negative affixes to be more challenging, and yes, they do carry over to the next dungeon. I think there was some question about whether that was happening on the test server or not, but yes, definitely. So by dungeon 3 you have 3 negative affixes on your dungeon. Now, some of those affixes will even affect the mechanics of the Astaroth boss battle at the end of the 3rd dungeon. They said that no 2 Astaroth fights should feel the same. I doubt this will be possible, but it sounds like they've somehow increased the variables to make this fight less samey, which is great. Also, his rewards have been juiced. That's great as well, because I thought that he wasn't worth the time to fight previously. Oh, and a great change, we can now access Escalating Nightmares before Torment 1. It'll be a nerfed version with no Astaroth fight, but I do think it's important to be able to start accessing one of the star features of the season before reaching endgame. I think if people load up a new season and after a couple of hours they're not experiencing new stuff, I think a lot of people are just going to clock out. And you might argue, well, it only takes a couple of hours to reach the end game. There's a lot of players for whom it does not take only a couple of hours, okay? Now, some miscellaneous changes. All of the Undercity has been juiced for rune drops, not just the specific Undercity 4 runes. So doing any Undercity now, you're going to be getting more runes. Lair boss rune drops have been juiced. There are now multiple Nightmare Dungeon affixes to let you customize the bonus rewards in the dungeon, to let you target farm different things. On PTR, they had heavily nerfed the Spiritborn's Hunter ult, since it was used by over 90% of Spiritborn players. People hated the nerf, so they're reverting that nerf. That nerf effectively killed the functionality of the Hunter as it was being used, so they reverted the nerf. They're keeping the functionality as people used it, but they're just dialing down the numbers so it's not as powerful instead. And they're also buffing the other ults. Oh, and Overpower got nerfed even more than on the test server. On the test server got an 80% nerf. That apparently was not enough. To nerf it even further, they have now entirely removed the mechanic that makes you deal more overpower damage based on stacking Fortify and health. And I'm actually sad that they removed this because it made Overpower feel unique, and it was interesting to stack damage mitigation mechanics to boost damage. Now Overpower has lost a part of its identity, and it's just going to be a flat 50% extra damage whenever it procs. Now, I'm not going to argue that Overpower wasn't overpowered. I just think it's a shame that we lost some of what made it cool. During the Q&A, the team was asked for their thoughts on boss invulnerability phases, which has been a hot topic in the community throughout Season 8. And that, in my opinion, was an excellent question to ask them. They basically expressed that they're looking into ways to capture the vibes of having these different phases in a fight, but without putting a hard stop on the action like we see in some of the current boss fights. So an example they gave is if you could beat a certain DPS check, then you can skip a phase entirely. And I'm glad that they're exploring these ideas and they're receptive to the community's feedback here in hating these invulnerability phases. They were also asked if they would ever add seasonal powers to the base game, and I feel like they didn't really understand the question, because the answer they gave was that they look for the best performing seasonal powers and think about how to add them to the base game. And my interpretation of this is how they've, for instance, added in some vampiric powers in the form of legendary aspects, right? I believe what the question was really asking, though, was will we ever get a permanent power mechanic? Like, if we were to keep Horadric spells, like we would keep that interface, the way we build the powers and all that, not just like a specific power is now, just an aspect. I would like to know if that is ever a possibility, or if the only way we would see powers come back is in some form that does not add new mechanics to the game. Obviously, we can't just have every season's powers mechanic get permanently added into the game, because power creep's going to get out of control, and then we have like a million different very samey mechanics, and that doesn't make sense. But like, maybe if one day just one of them, the best version of all of them combined would get added, right? It would make the base game deeper. Because again, the current mood from the community is very tepid on Season 9. I think this is the least excited I've seen the community for any D4 season yet. The seasonal ideas are feeling safe, they're feeling repetitive, they're feeling like we're just recycling and improving old ideas rather than exploring big bold new concepts. And people seeing that the Reliquary for Season 9 seems to have the same issues as the Season 8 Reliquary is just the icing on top. Meanwhile, it doesn't help that when we look over at Diablo Immortal, they're getting a new class, the Druid. And again, Diablo 4 players are jealous of Diablo Immortal players because this is the Druid that a lot of us wanted. It's feels much more in line with the Diablo 2 version of the Druid in appearance. It even has the ability to summon an Oak Sage for peak nostalgia. And according to a playtester from PC Gamer, you can suck enemies up into a tornado, you can launch them into the air with some kind of an earth power, and these just seem like really fun powers. The Druid arrives in Immortal on July 3rd. Now, we have confirmation that Xbox is attending Gamescom in August, with Bethesda and Blizzard having a presence. The WoW team has confirmed their attendance. We haven't got anything yet from the Diablo team, but I am expecting the reveal of Diablo 4's second expansion at Gamescom. And speaking of Xbox, in Xbox news that feels like a deja vu nightmare, we're looking at yet another round of layoffs. Yes, again. According to reports from Bloomberg and The Verge, Microsoft is preparing a fresh wave of job cuts across its Xbox division as part of a broader company-wide restructuring timed with the end of their fiscal year. This will mark the fourth major round of layoffs for Xbox in the past 18 months. And the rumored scope, up to 2,000 employees. That's roughly 10 to 20% of Xbox's total workforce, if you include Activision and Bethesda, which you should since they're part of Xbox now. Internal whispers are saying that entire studios might be shuttered. Now, obviously, they're not gonna be closing Blizzard or Activision, but unfortunately, smaller studios tend to be in the line of fire here. Now, for some context, this all follows a year of aggressive cost cutting. Back in January 2024, over a year ago, Microsoft laid off almost 2,000 employees from its gaming division. In May of 2024, they shut down Arcane Austin, makers of Prey and Redfall. They shut down Tango Gameworks, creators of Hi-Fi Rush and The Evil Within. They shut down Alpha Dog Studios and Roundhouse Studios. Then in September, they laid off another 650. Now you might ask, what's driving all these layoffs? Well, Microsoft spent $65 billion acquiring Activision Blizzard. That puts an enormous spotlight on Xbox to start turning massive profit. And according to Bloomberg, Microsoft's leadership has been scrutinizing the division more closely than ever after the acquisition. And morale across Xbox studios is reportedly at an all-time low. George Broussard, a co-founder of 3D Realms and one of the creators of Duke Nukem, posted to X that internal developer circles are anxious and worried. Oh, and by the way, Microsoft's gaming revenue is technically up 5% year over year. Revenue is in profit, however, and you know what really eats into profits? Employee salaries. We've seen Xbox leaning heavily into its Game Pass as a business model, but Game Pass has grown less than 10% year over year. There is no chance, barring a miracle, that they're going to reach the target of 100 million subscribers that they wanted by the year 2030. We're only at 35 million subscribers today. I guess raising the price of games to $80 will help push people to Game Pass, but there's still a very long while to go before they can become the Netflix of gaming. Then, in no rest for the wicked news, Moon Studios just dropped a big patch for their Breach update called the Breach Refined. It is now live, and it's packed enough changes to justify a full new playthrough. This patch has been shaped directly by community feedback since the launch of the Breach. First off, and likely the biggest thing here, is that they added difficulty modes. Default mode, an easy mode, which reduces enemy life by 20% and reduces enemy damage by 50%. For a lot of folks who thought this game wasn't for them because it was too difficult, well, now it is for everyone. This is huge. I cannot overstate this. And you can change the difficulty at any time as well. So if at any point you think you can take on more challenge, or you're having a bad day and you just want to unwind and you want to drop down the difficulty, you can just change it whenever you want, even if it's just to beat one boss. They also added a hard difficulty where enemies have more life and deal more damage, but you also get more XP. Another feature, previously utility runes like heals had to take up a slot on your weapon. Now you can equip up to 4 utility runes directly onto your character to have at all times. This is huge. You don't have to shuffle around weapons loaded up with different runes for combat and utility. You also start the game with the heal rune by default, so now you don't have to just rely on consumables for healing in the early game. Fast travel has changed. You can now fast travel between any kind of whisper called an Elder Whisper. By default, there's only a few in the game, but you can spend a certain resource to upgrade any whisper into an Elder Whisper. So what basically happens is the deeper into the game you go, the more you rise in level, the more you farm up this material, then the more freely you'll be able to just fast travel anywhere you've previously been. Oh, and if you're the kind of person who would frequently fall off ledges, I don't know anyone like that. Well, they added a new ledge protection feature that'll make your character automatically stop once they reach a ledge rather than just leap off. And they also reduced fall damage. Bows and base spells now use stamina again instead of focus. This is huge. So glad they reverted this change. Now they nerfed them, of course, the power of the bows and the base spell attacks. Otherwise this would be way too OP. But this is the fantasy that people want to play when you pick a bow user or a mage. Oh, another thing. You ever find yourself navigating the world to find some loot in a hard to reach spot, only for it to be like a mushroom? And you're like, why did I bother going there? Because that sure happened to me all the time. Again and again and again. And now they've done a pass to make sure that hard to reach loot is actually worth your time. I love this because I love the world of Wicked and I want to explore every nook and cranny of it. And I do like the little puzzle or skill challenge of getting to that hard to find loot. Also, you now gain XP and focus from gathering resources like mining a tree. And there's a new timed strike mechanic while gathering. If you hit the interact button just as you see your tool physically hit the resource, you get more focus and more loot. It makes gathering resources a more active and less brainless process. Now I know a lot of people were holding off to play this game, waiting for the co-op update, but at least in the meantime, I think this patch puts the game into a great state for a lot of people to try out or revisit. I haven't had a chance to try it myself, but just based on what I'm hearing from the patch notes and everything. I'm sorry, I'm sure you guys could tell I'm under the weather. But if you folks have tried out the update, sound off in the comments with your thoughts. In some Path of Exile news, the servers continue to be a big issue, especially for European players. Frequent disconnects, latency spikes, lots of maps and resources lost as a consequence. GGG did release an official post addressing the issue, saying they're working on enhancing their DDoS protection, since that's allegedly been the culprit behind all this. Unfortunately, some of those new safeguards have backfired and were blocking legitimate traffic. Now, I've actually seen an interesting theory from the community that the DDoSers are exploiters who are deliberately triggering rollbacks to somehow dupe or otherwise profit, because it really begs the question, who would be DDoSing the PoE1 servers so consistently and for so long since the launch of the league? Cui bono? Who benefits from this? Now, outside of that, mercenaries continue to be a beloved mechanic, although, again, balancing probably isn't perfect yet. Some mercenary setups maybe contribute a bit too much to player power, but they're a fun way to get extra power, and the other interactions with the game that they allow, you know, like you can take their loot, stuff like that. They serve as extra itemization slots to equip uniques that you would never want to wear yourself, right? It makes some uniques more viable and useful now. It's all just really positive additions to the game. And I know all PoE leagues are designed with the idea that they're going core. That's actually a big difference in philosophy with Diablo 4, for instance. PoE League started off as a testing grounds for new permanent features for the game, and they only discarded League mechanics that were truly poorly received and could not be reworked into something that worked. D4 seasonal content, on the other hand, is designed to be discarded, and only the best stuff is worked into the game somehow in the future. But to get back on track here, mercenaries felt from the start like they were not just an experimental feature. They felt immediately like a feature that was right at home in the game. What do you folks think? Do you agree? Are mercenaries a keeper? Sound off in the comments. In other news, Lies of P Overture has officially crossed 3 million copies sold. That's a huge milestone for NeoWiz and Round 8 Studio, especially for a new IP in the Souls-like genre. The DLC launched on June 6th, and between strong word of mouth and glowing reviews, it's been climbing the charts ever since. But here's a real feel-good moment. The devs, like the actual devs, not the execs or the company as a whole, they were actually rewarded for their success. It's a wild concept, I know. In a rare W for the industry, the team received performance bonuses, 2 weeks of paid vacation, and each of them even received a brand new Switch 2 console as a thank you for hitting the milestone. And fans are loving the DLC. I've seen this game referred to as the best non-From Software Souls-like out there, which is still high praise. 100% of critics on OpenCritic recommend the DLC, giving it an 85 out of 100 average score. Did you folks check out Lies of P Overture? What did you think? Sign off with your review below. Then in some Grim Dawn news, Crate Entertainment gave us an update on the upcoming third expansion, Fangs of Asterkarn, which is shaping up to be their biggest expansion yet. 54 new bosses, including 8 new Nemesis encounters. And they're going to have some of the most advanced skill tech the devs have ever built, squeezing out every last drop of juice from their aging engine. Over 380 new unique items. There'll be 2 roguelike dungeons coming post-launch, each with their own new bosses and loot. There's a whole lot more. You can check out their dev blog for the full details. Now, originally, this expansion was supposed to come out in 2024. Obviously, we're 2025 now, so that didn't happen. As of now, they're aiming for a release in late fall or winter of 2025, but they admit spring or even early summer 2026 isn't off the table if polish takes longer. And it sounds like feature creep was a main reason for the delay. They just kept thinking of new things to add. And if this will be the final expansion of Grim Dawn, which indications are that is indeed the case, I can't blame them. They want to send off the game in the best way they can. The devs reveal that they're actually working on 4 different projects at once. I'm concerned that they're kind of spreading themselves too thin. Got Fangs of Asterkarn. They got Farthest Frontier, that's their city sim game. They've got an unnamed RTS title in the works, and an unannounced horror game they just revealed. They also revealed that once work on Farthest Frontier and Fangs of Asterkarn winds down, they'll begin work on Grim Dawn 2, using the same engine being developed for the RTS. And speaking of the RTS, they actually hired Jason Huck, former StarCraft 2 design lead, so that's promising. And one last note for Grim Dawn here, the devs released this week another massive patch. Great to see them continuing to support a great game. Alright, on to some game design philosophy news. The big topic of discussion. So, the Outer Worlds 2 director recently made waves with a pretty firm stance that the Outer Worlds 2 will not allow respecs outside the starter zone. So, no do-overs at all for your character build. Tim Kaine, the director, he explained it like this, quote, "Not every game is for every single person. Sometimes you have to pick a lane. Lots of people love respec, but I personally want the player to understand their choices are permanent. They matter. And then they think more about their choices." His view is that if players can respec at any time, they stop role-playing a consistent character and start just min-maxing for whatever situation they're in. He sees respec as undermining the identity of a character, turning them from a person into a build spreadsheet. Now, a common counter-argument to not allowing respec is that you are not respecting players' time by forcing them to play through the game again just to change their character build. But he framed it this way, quote, "We want to respect people's time, and for me, in a role-playing game, this is respecting somebody's time. Saying your choices matter, so take that seriously, and we're going to respect that by making sure that we give you cool reactivity for those choices that you're making. That's respecting your time." And that's a lovely sentiment. And maybe in a Dungeons & Dragons game with a dungeon master who can alter the game appropriately in response to the choices that you make to ensure you never feel like you've made suboptimal choices, yeah, that works then. But in a video game, I don't think that's feasible to achieve. I've previously spoken about respec in the context of Diablo and ARPGs. I see respec as a solution to a problem, and that problem is player regret. In my opinion, players should never feel regret over a decision they made when they made the best decision they could in that moment with the information available to them. For instance, games present different classes, different skills, different builds, and generally the baseline assumption is that all of these choices are viable. You can use a bow, you can use a shield, you can use magic, but if it turns out that bow builds just aren't as good as other builds, or say the game lets you make a stealth-based character who can sneak around really well, but then the game does not give you enough opportunities to make that matter, these will cause player regret, and that regret leads to frustration if the player can't undo that decision. This is not the player choosing poorly or making a mistake. This is the game fundamentally not equally supporting all the possible choices that you can make. Again, a living, breathing dungeon master can adapt the game to the choices you make. If you make a stealth character, he can present you with stealth scenarios so your choices feel validated. If the build you put together is too weak or too strong even, he can scale the difficulty dynamically, he can give you more magic items, or he could change the kinds of enemies you fight to be better or worse against your build. To my knowledge, no video game has yet done stuff like that to that extent. Worse, a lot of games deliberately obfuscate what the significance of your choices even is. Sometimes you pick something that has no mathematical explanation. It just says, increases your luck. Okay, by how much? What does that even mean? What is luck? What does it do? How can I make an informed decision if nothing is properly explained? And often decisions you make in the early levels when you're still trying to figure out how the game works will lead you down a late game path, so you could be paying for your bad early game choices throughout the entire rest of your playthrough, such that, okay, by the time you're like 25% of the way through the game, you're like, well, now that I understand things more, let me just start a new character and make the right choices. And this is what leads to players just looking up build guides. Because of regret. Because it feeling like the game punishes you for not lucking into the best choices. Now, I totally get the desire for consequence, for it to feel like your choices really matter. But that only works in a world where all the systems are perfectly balanced, clearly communicated, and fair. And that world doesn't exist. Now, I'll repeat, I believe respec is a solution to a problem. If a better solution could be found that does not involve respec, then I'm all for it. But for now, respec is the best solution we have. I guess theoretically, you could design a game where no matter what decision you make, how bad that decision is, the player doesn't regret that decision. But what do you folks think? Are you for or against respecs, and why? Sound off in the comments. Then lastly, in some quick Last Epoch news, we got a teaser trailer for Season 3, Beneath Ancient Skies, which will launch on August 21st. Great to see that the team has worked out their workflow for getting seasons out sooner. The teaser has a big Jurassic Park reference in it, so I imagine dinosaurs and the ancient era will play a big part. But we'll just have to wait a bit longer for more details to emerge. And that's going to wrap up this video, folks, but do be sure to check out last week's video in which we discussed the new Path of Exile expansion. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my Patreon supporters for making these videos possible. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to join Riku's Raiders for more gaming content.